Hi, my name is Stacey Pitts. I'm the co-founder of CBD BioCare, and joining me today is Dr. Frank Michalski, who is a chiropractor and also functional medicine expert, and oh, by the way, a CBD and CBD BioCare expert. And joining him is Taylor Passero, who is a physician assistant and expert in women's health. So welcome both of you.
Thanks for having us, Stacey. Nice to be here.
So today we're going to talk about a ever common, popular topic amongst women over the age of 40 who suffer from perimenopause and menopause. And we're going to talk about how CBD can potentially help. So let's first define it so we're all coming from the same standpoint on what these two conditions are: perimenopause and menopause. And yes, I'm calling them conditions.
So I think that's a great way to kind of explain it. I mean, it is a condition. It's something that we are going to, every single woman in the world is going to deal with this at some point in their life. It's actually 1/3 of your life. If you're a female, you're going to be in menopause for 1/3 of your entire life. So it's something that we're going to have to deal with for a long period of time. But that's a great question. Kind of, what is menopause? How do we define what menopause is? So the true definition of menopause is ovarian failure. And that sounds like a really big, scary word. And why are our ovaries failing? But to kind of understand that, we have to back up a little bit and do a little bit of a reproductive overview. So big difference between females and males. When females are born, as a young female baby, we are born with as many eggs as we'll ever have. So we're born with an average of 1 to 2 million eggs. As we age, as we get older, that egg reservoir slowly decreases. So we're born 1 to 2 million eggs. Around age 13, 14, when we're starting to go through puberty, we're starting to have our first couple cycles, that egg reservoir decreases to 400,000. Every single time we ovulate and we go through our cycle, we release eggs, and that decreases even more. So your perfect time for fertilization, or your perfect time for reproduction, is around your 20s. Once we get to 30, 35, that decreases to now 100,000. So not only is our reservoir going from here to here, as we age, our eggs are also aging with us. So your eggs are becoming resistant to what we call FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone. So if you saw our other video, FSH is what stimulates the follicle to release that egg so we can ovulate. When your eggs are starting to fail, as they're getting older, they're not working, your FSH is going to keep rising. It's stimulating that egg to be released, and it's not working. So your FSH increases and your estrogen decreases. Once you get to a certain level where it's just completely failing, we go through menopause. So that's how we like to define what menopause is. Now, that's based on a healthy woman who doesn't have a whole lot of issues going on. Now we can have what we call surgical menopause. So what I find interesting, a lot of women think that we had a hysterectomy, so our uterus, our cervix is removed. We're not bleeding, we're not getting a period anymore. Oh, I must be in menopause. If you still have your ovaries and your ovaries are still working, you're still not in menopause, you're still cycling. So you still can have those PMS symptoms without bleeding. So that's common in some, younger 40s. We have maybe multiple fibroids, multiple polyps, we're bleeding very heavy. We have to do a surgical hysterectomy. So we remove that uterus. If your ovaries are still there, we keep them there purposely so you don't go through menopause early. Or in
What
another,
about,
go ahead.
When does perimenopause come into play?
So perimenopause is that age range before menopause. So as we're going through that time frame where your eggs are starting to be more resistant and they're not working as well and your estrogen is decreasing, perimenopause is typically 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years before we go through menopause. So you can start to have a lot of cycle irregularities, where maybe your periods are becoming more heavy, you're bleeding much more, they're getting shorter apart. Or it can be the complete opposite, we're bleeding less. We're bleeding more infrequently. So when we were having our period for 5 days every month, maybe we're having it for 3 days every 3 months. So that's what perimenopause is. It's your body preparing for menopause.
As a woman who's aging, when can they expect to hit perimenopause and then go into full-fledged menopause?
So average age in America for menopause is about 52. So about 95% of women will go through menopause between age 45 and 55. So typically perimenopause tends to be an average of maybe 5 years before that. So we can expect women in their young 40s, even into their mid 40s, to be expecting some of those perimenopausal symptoms before they go through full menopause.
And, I've read, and because I'm a woman in my 40s, I'm familiar with this topic. And, it's always shocking when you start to enter that phase of your life, right? Because you start to experience different symptoms. There's hot flashes, there's night sweats, there's mood swings, there's sleeping issues. So how do you know that it's menopause or perimenopause, or how do you differentiate on whether it's something else going on?
So that's a good question. So I always tell my female patients, menopause and perimenopause is a very strong familial linkage. So what your mom went through, what your sister, aunt, female cousins, anyone close in your family, what they went through, 90% of the time, you're going to go through the exact same symptoms at the exact same time. Now, of course, there's exceptions. If we've had a surgical reason our ovaries have been removed, or if we've been through a medical menopause, maybe, God forbid, we've had a female cancer where we have to give you chemo and medicine to decrease your estrogen. In those senses, you're going to go through menopause earlier. But if that's not the case, I always say, talk to your family, talk to your mom, your sisters, if you have older siblings, and say, kind of, what did you experience? Because that's a good indication of what you're going to experience. Now, there's definitely other things that can cause hot flashes and insomnia. So we want to make sure, if we're concerned, maybe we do some blood work and figure out, is there a thyroid problem? Is there something else going on that's not just going to say, oh, it's menopause?
Now, Dr. Frank, we're not trying to leave you out on this ever important topic. Nothing like feeling like the only male in the room, right?
Yes. Oh, I know.
So you are our CBD expert. You have great experience with CBD BioCare in particular. So let's talk about some of your patients that have walked through the door, and of course, working with Taylor and her patients about, how is CBD being used in your practice to help these women, and what are you recommending?
Yeah, of course. So I think one of the coolest things, or most exciting in my book when it comes to menopause, one of the big risk things that we see or that we become concerned about is osteopenia and osteoporosis, right? Usually around that age, we see females needing to go for regular DEXA scans or bone density scans. One of the most exciting things about CBD, and this is an area of research that I would argue is actually being developed pretty rapidly, is into osteoporosis. So on your bones, you actually have CB receptors, CB2 receptors. And when these receptors are stimulated, your bones, something called osteoblasts, little cells in there, actually start to produce more bone to provide your bones with more density. For those of our listeners who have osteoporosis or osteopenia and don't actually know what that means, it means your bones are no longer dense. They become very fragile, kind of brittle. They can break easily. That's why we're worried about a fracture in the lumbar spine, the low back, or a fracture in the hip. One of the neatest things I think about CBD and postmenopausal women is its potential effects on preventing and potentially even helping to support a very healthy bone density. Now, this would be an easy thing, I think, too, for our viewers to follow up on. You're not using CBD, you have your old DEXA scans and you see your T-score ratings. Then you start to use CBD, and maybe 6 months, a year later, look for some changes in bone density. See if there was a positive change there. That's one area. Another area too, and I find this one fascinating, is for hot flashes. No, I don't personally get hot flashes, but I will say I used to get pretty nervous, and I don't know if anyone here has ever dealt with that nervousness sweating that occurs, right? Maybe your palms, a little bit in the feet, hyperhidrosis. So cannabinoids, cannabis, has actually been shown to decrease that sweating response, not necessarily body temperature, but that sweating response. And there's a specific receptor that cannabinoids act on in the human body. It's called your TRPV receptor. And it can actually decrease the chances of breaking out into a hot flash or a sweating episode, whatever you want to call it. So that's another thing where I think I see huge benefit. Most females we work with, one of the first things they're telling me is, oh my gosh, my hot flashes are so improved. And in turn, I'm sleeping better. I'm not rolling around, throwing the sheets off, can't get comfortable. So if we've accomplished that, if we're saying, hey, we're looking at maybe some better bone density, you're sleeping better because you're not having the hot flashes, we're already in a much, much, much better direction. If you're sleeping better, chances are your mood is going to be better. Nothing can ruin a mood like a horrible night's sleep, especially if it's ongoing for, what did you say, 1/3 of your life? That would be no fun. So I would say those are some of the most exciting areas. I mentioned this in the video where we were talking about PMS, but as you go through menopause, estrogen levels decrease. Estrogen is responsible for recruiting the activity of your endocannabinoid system. So if you have healthy estrogen levels, you, in theory, have healthier endocannabinoid function. When estrogen decreases, your body's own cannabinoids, the naturally occurring ones, also decrease. As we know from previous podcasts, as we know from literature, your endocannabinoid system regulates pain control, mood control, right? Appetite. So if estrogen goes down and our endocannabinoid system is no longer being regulated by estrogen and its tone or its function is also decreasing, we're going to see issues with pain, mood, appetite, sleep. So you can take a phytocannabinoid such as CBD from a plant, an external source of cannabinoids, that will block that enzyme that I've mentioned before and FAAH. And ideally, we're going to see a rise in our body's own endocannabinoid levels, helping to balance out some of those symptoms. And it's that cycle that I always talk about. Now maybe we're going to sleep better. If we sleep better, we're going to have better hormone control. If we have better sleep, we're also going to have more willpower when it comes to our appetite. So a lot of these things are connected and can be either directly or indirectly impacted by CBD. But those would be the big ones: the bone density, the mood support, the sleep, and of course the hot flashes, that preventing hot flashes and sweat attacks as well. But yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me because I think a lot of things within medical research, it suggests that if you take this prescription, for example, this is the result for 99% of the population. CBD is not like that. For hot flashes, let's speak about that specifically. For me, I went from having a lot of hot flashes to, once I was using CBD on a regular basis, over time, they have pretty much disappeared. I don't know why that is. For me, it's working. For another woman, she may or may not have, it may have just decreased the number of hot flashes or may not have had the same success. So I'd love to say that every woman taking CBD would never have another hot flash. My gosh, I would be on Oprah, right? That would be fantastic. But that's not the case. And maybe you guys could speak to the fact that why isn't it the case that the CBD would have the same effect on hot flashes for me as it does for another woman?
So I think, to Taylor's point earlier too, that really comes down to, and this they kind of do have an understanding of, that really comes down to your estrogen levels, your individual estrogen levels, and where they're at that point in time. One thing that we commonly notice is women who are going through menopause, and let's say they're looking to use CBD to support anxiety or support healthy sleep. And then let's say we have a younger female who's going through PMS symptoms, who's also not sleeping, who also has insomnia and maybe some mood fluctuations. As we age, the going theory is that estrogen decreases. This is what the results in menopause. We find in our offices that those women tend to need much higher dosages of CBD. I actually find a lot of women in our offices who are looking to offset hot flashes are using the 3,500 milligram concentration, and they're using 100 milligrams plus a day. But again, I believe if we were to run some testing, maybe some saliva hormone testing on you versus someone else, I think we'd see a dramatic difference in their estrogen levels. Now, can we say if your levels are this, take this much CBD? We just can't say that yet. And that's, again, my opinion, my hypotheses. But if you look at the current literature, they're saying it's strongly connected. And for that reason, we usually see women who are younger going through PMS symptoms need less CBD, and women who are older going through menopause need a lot more CBD to help aid in this very similar symptoms. So, yeah.
Taylor, do you want to add to that at all? Things that you're seeing in your practice?
I think everyone is just so different, and I think treatment is so individualized per woman. So kind of like what he was saying, if I'm going to recommend CBD, it's also, I'm going to recommend other supplements. So magnesium, if you add magnesium at that time, that works really well for hot flashes and insomnia. So I think everyone is just a little bit different in how much they need versus how much they don't need for their symptoms.
So Dr. Frank, let's I love giving people a good guideline on where to start. So if somebody is saying, okay, I'm not consuming CBD right now, I am having perimenopause or menopausal symptoms, what would you recommend as a starting spot?
I'm more inclined in these cases, and again, this is for someone who's generally speaking healthy. We're just talking about pretty straightforward hot flashes, menopause symptoms. It's been confirmed. I'm usually starting at 40 milligrams a day plus. So that's quite a bit higher than some of the other things that I've talked about. I'm usually starting between 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, and working up. In most cases, I'm usually starting at 40 milligrams and going upwards to 200 milligrams. So it's a much higher starting point in most cases. I would say the most common thing I'll hear if it's too much CBD for someone is that they develop just a slightly dull headache. It comes and goes really quick. That's usually my telltale sign of, okay, maybe that 40 milligrams was too much for this individual. So we cut it back, 30 milligrams, 20 milligrams. A majority though, and again, this is my numbers that I see, probably 90% of women I'd say are using over 40 milligrams of CBD. So that 1,500 milligram concentration or even that 3,500 milligram, we like to have on hand for those menopause symptoms. So yeah, higher dosages for that.
You know, it's interesting that I had not really considered CBD for any type of perimenopause or menopausal symptoms until I experienced it myself. I was using CBD for sleep, and then what I noticed over time is fewer hot flashes. So of course I made that, that connection. But what I realized at first, again, was that they were fewer, and then they just disappeared altogether. So really fantastic. And then I put it out there, and I started getting women writing me back and saying, oh my gosh, this is happening for me too. So really exciting, because it's my impression from what I've read and learned and heard from my own physician that there's still, hot flashes are a little bit of a mystery still. Isn't that correct?
I would say, I'll say this, and I'll let Taylor take it. Hormones are still a little bit of a mystery, and that's the problem with the research in this field. That's what makes this topic so confusing. So why does it work for you and not for her as well? Hormones are still a bit of a mystery. They communicate with so many processes in our body, and so many outside factors can influence our hormone levels. It's all a mystery. That's still a big mystery.
And I mean, I completely agree. And like I said before, I think every woman is so individual in what their hormone levels are. And, we can both be the same age, and one female may be the average 150 pounds healthy, not a smoker. Then we can have a 300-pound female who's the same age, who smokes, who drinks, who doesn't eat that healthy. She's going to probably need a lot more than the healthier of average weight female. So I think everyone is just so different, and her hormone levels are probably drastically different than the woman who's the same age, who doesn't drink, who doesn't smoke, and is an average 150 pounds. So I think it's just You really have to look at the patient, and that's why I would say definitely talk to someone who is an expert. Talk to someone like Frank or someone like myself who understands a little bit about CBD and how it's going to help you for your symptoms.
I'll say it too. You said for the hot flashes, you reminded me, I was giving a seminar once, and it was a relatively large size crowd. And we probably had 60 plus people there. And I'm in the middle of it, and I'm talking about its correlation to estrogen. And this woman stands up, and she's Dr. Frank, I have to say something. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, where's this going to go? And sure enough, she just goes into this blurb about her hot flashes and how much they reduced. And quite frankly, it was the best thing in the world that could have happened to me at a seminar, because I was like, wow, I didn't even have to say anything. I didn't even have to do the next slide. She just gave the testimonial herself. So we really do see results. When it works, it works.
I love that. And when it works, it works. And what you're taking CBD for, whether it's sleep, stress, anxiety, inflammation, I mean, the list is so long. And I think what we all can agree with is that we've seen tremendous results, and that CBD as a natural herbal supplement is offering great hope and encouragement and great promise in the medical industry. So I think we're going to continue to learn all the different ways that this amazing supplement is helping people. So again, talk to your physician, reach out to us if you have questions, and we'll be happy to help. So thank you guys so much. This has been a great opportunity to talk about something that I can definitely identify with.
Have a great day, Stacey.
Thank you.